Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm back with another video. It is 8 p.m. on December 19th. That's Friday evening. And I've got a couple of things to talk about. The main thing is what is going on in Ukraine. And the issue that I'm raising here is the fact that people are not really aware of what is the climate in Ukraine itself. I think people have this, they're under the misconception that Ukraine is united in its quote unquote defense against the unprovoked invasion of the Russians. And that there's nothing that could be further than the truth than that. The fact of the matter is that it's very, very difficult to recruit people these days. In the beginning, there were a fair number of people who were willing to take up arms to defend their country, not understanding what they were actually, they were fighting for the rights of BlackRock to steal their resources. That's what they were fighting for, but they thought they were fighting for something else. But anyway, that's not what I want to talk about to begin with. What I want to talk about is the fact that I just got a message from a friend of mine named Ted McIntyre, and he's a former lawyer, I believe, in the U.S. I guess he's a former Air Force person, and he just sent me a message. This is called the Statement of the Former JAG's Working Group on Media Reports of Pentagon No-Quarter Orders in Caribbean Boat Strikes, 29th of November 2025, published by justsecurity.org. Now, the JAG stands for Judge Adjutant General, which basically means these are lawyers in the U.S. military. So I'm quoting here. It says, the former JAG's working group unanimously considers both the giving and the execution of these orders, if true, to constitute war crimes, murder, or both. And he leaves some links. He sent me some links in the email. So he said, please consider sharing with others in your network. So that's what I'm doing. Yeah, he's a retired major in the U.S. Air Force. So the point that I'm making here and what he's asked me to put, bring to your attention is the fact that the lawyers, the military lawyers, are saying to President Trump and to the Secretary of Offense, Pete Hegseth, that attacking these small boats in the Caribbean, where there's no evidence whatsoever that they were transporting drugs, and no reason to shoot these people and kill them, it's just completely unacceptable. It is illegal. It constitutes war crimes, murder, or both. And so I think it's only public outcry can change that situation, that they'll stop doing that. But the other aspect of it is that it seems that those narratives have failed, and as a result, Donald Trump has reverted to his inner nature. It's like I don't know how to describe it. He says that Venezuela stole our oil, and so let me explain something here. Venezuela has a lot of oil. They didn't get it by going to the United States and taking the oil from Texas and Oklahoma and bringing it back to Venezuela and putting it into the ground in Venezuela. It's been there for millennia. But Trump says that because we developed the oil fields, that gives us the right to call them our own, which, if you think about it, if you have some resource and you hire some professional to do some work for you, you pay them to do the work, but that doesn't give them the right to own your resource. Donald Trump thinks it does. So he's rather deluded in that respect, and he's willing to commit war crimes to do it, including blockading Venezuela, which is causing serious hardship to the people of Venezuela. People are going to die because of this greed on the part of President Trump. It's really outrageous. So it's like this is par for the course. There's one ancillary issue here is that there's a lot of people who are in the former military, former intelligence, and you see them on the alt media, particularly on shows like Judge Andrew Napolitano and Dialogue Works and other sites. They're good. They're good sites, and I don't disagree with a lot of what they say. They kind of recognize that we're we're doing bad. But and it's good that the military, these military people who constitute probably a rather small number of military who are willing to even speak up about it. But here I am, and some of them, they say, we know about this because we're military. I'm saying, I'm just a stupid Zen monk, and I knew that this was all a bunch of bullshit, going back to the Vietnam War. I was a college kid, protesting the war. So don't tell me I don't know what's going on. And all you need is open eyes to see what's going on. Okay, so enough rant on that. Anyway, so, but what I want to talk about here is, I call it a topic that nobody is talking about. And it turns out that you can go to YouTube, or mostly YouTube, I would say, or maybe Rumble, or some of these other media outlets, or even on X, and you can see videos of people talking about different things. But it's in that universe. There's a whole other universe going on Telegram, which is it's a social media app that was generated or created by a Russian guy, and he's not like a Russian nationalist, I would say. He actually, he left Russia because he thought he had disputes with the Russian government. Let's put it that way. But he created this Telegram app, which gives people a lot of anonymity. It allows them to say what they want to say without the government snooping on them. That's basically what it is. So he has this Telegram channel, and it's named after a famous partisan named Kovpak. So let me explain. During World War II, the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union, and they went right into Ukraine, which was the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. And I would say, from what I can tell, about 10% of the population sided with the Nazi invaders. And probably the most prominent person was called Stefan Bandera. And he participated in a number of massacres. He killed probably several tens of thousands of people, maybe more. And he wore a Nazi uniform. And eventually, I guess he had a kind of a falling out with them, and they sent him to a quote unquote concentration camp, which was, he was not treated badly, and he survived the war. And then after World War II, he basically created a guerrilla force that was fighting the Soviet Union after World War II. And it wasn't until 1953 that the Soviet Union finally either imprisoned these people, or killed them, or drove them out of the country. Stefan Bandera himself was killed by probably a KGB agent. But the thing is that they only made up 10% of the population. 90% of the population sided with the Soviet Union, and many of these people were trapped inside of occupied Ukraine. So there was one guy named Kovpak, and he helped develop what we call partisan detachments. These are basically guerrilla stay behind units that were not part of the Soviet army, but they were civilians fighting the people who were killing their families. So the Kovpak detachment is named after that very famous guerrilla fighter. And so I'm reading the message here. This is a translation from a Telegram message. It says, the Kovpak detachment thanks all our partisans and underground fighters for their work. Your efforts are not in vain. For security reasons, we will not discuss our results for now, but there's plenty to talk about. We continue to urge all sensible people in Ukraine to assist in the fight against the Ukro-Nazis. It's within our power to help speed up the liberation of Ukraine and end the war. he's talking about liberating Ukraine. Who's he liberating it from? He's liberating from Donald Trump in the EU and NATO. We need any information about the armed forces of Ukraine, the location of headquarters, positions, checkpoints, warehouses, repair shops, radars, and fuel storage bases, military cargo transports, including rail, as well as any data on Nazis, foreign mercenaries, of which there are several thousands, and their whereabouts. It's not necessary to take photos. Nazi thugs might find them on your phone during street searches. Bring victory and peace closer. Join the detachment. And then he gives information on how to send information to this group of people. And they're apparently operating in there's at least 5 different regions within Ukraine that they're doing this. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And so the reason why I bring it all up is because people have this very monochromatic idea of what this war is about. One of the biggest problems in Western society is it's very, as I've mentioned earlier, very Manichaean, very, they see things in black and white terms, and they don't really understand the complexity of the situation. So, and that's my job, is to try and explain these things to people so you can get a better idea of what's actually going on. That'll be it for this video. I just want to again ask people, if you can, to support my channel. The cost of running this channel are far greater than anything I'm making from it. This is really more of a labor of love, you could say. I feel like there's not enough truth going on in the West. People really need to understand what's happening. And so that's why I've got this channel that I'm doing. Now, the way you can support me is to either make a donation through PayPal, or you can be a subscriber to my Substack channel, or you can also buy a t-shirt from my online store. So I've been talking about my information billboard t-shirts. I've got them now. You can see this one. It says, "Peace is the best." And here I am talking about people, guerrilla fighters. I don't think I'm a coward. I don't think that I can participate in that. It's just, I've been a pacifist all my life. But ever since I was 13 years old, I read this, the autobiography of Albert Einstein. And I remember I was like in the 8th grade, and this kid was trying to, pick a fight with me. I said, I'm a pacifist. I'm a pacifist. And, he started, kind of hitting me a little bit. So I got him in a headlock. And I said, okay, that's it. We're going to stop. And he says, and I let go. And then he starts, come on, let's go. And I said, okay. And then he backed off. So I've never actually been in a real knockdown, dragged out fight with anybody. I managed to avoid that. I don't want to fight. But the thing is, sometimes, as I wrote an article about this called The Pacifist's Dilemma. What do you do when the war comes to you? So these people in the Donbass, they were just minding their own business. Russia was delivering a very reasonably priced oil and gas to Poland and Germany and to Europe. And suddenly these countries say, you're bad, we don't like you, you're evil, and we won't take your oil, and we're going to bring your country down, and we're going to steal your money, and we're going to finance and train and help these Nazis in Ukraine. You got to ask yourself what is going on. But the reality is that if your country is under attack, like the people in eastern Ukraine were under attack, the people in Ukraine itself. As I mentioned, I have a friend in one of these cities, and it's a Russian city. People speak Russian there. It's Russian culture. My friend said it was a Soviet-built city, and yet she can't talk with anybody because she knows that people, and nobody can talk with anybody because they know that essentially if they're caught supporting getting rid of this regime that was installed by the United States, they could go to prison or worse. So it's a very difficult situation. I'm in a position where I'm able to do this. I'm able to, alert people. So I hope, who knows, maybe they'll put me on a list. There's a number of people who, if they become prominent enough, they put their names on a death list, and people have been killed. So this is a bad situation, but I feel like, the way to end this war is it's going to be for Russia to basically defeat these people because they are completely unreasonable. And it's like in World War II, the Soviet Union did not negotiate with Hitler. He said, here's the paper. Hitler had already committed suicide, but to the surrendering military officer, he said, here's the surrender terms, sign it. And that's how World War II ended. And that's the way this is going to have to end as well. So that's what I got to say here. Thanks again for listening. I hope you don't mind my being a bit over the top here, but I felt like, people really don't know what is going on in Ukraine. It's a more complicated situation than most people think. So thanks again for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.